Hello there, I'm Ian Toombs from gofishing.co.uk and welcome to the second part of our extensive ground bait series. And in this piece we're going to cover how to mix ground bait and what sort of colours you ought to be using when you're mixing ground bait and using it. Right, when you take a tour through any tackle shop, you'll normally find there's 4 or 5 different colours of ground bait. There's brown, standard brown colour, green, which has become incredibly popular nowadays, the last sort of 2 or 3 years, red, which has been around for probably 15 years or so, and then black. Now then, choosing the right colour ground bait depends upon a few things really. First of all, the colour of the lake itself and the makeup of the bottom, and also the time of the year, and also the species of fish you want to catch. Now, everybody seems to know that red in particular is a fantastic colour for tench. It also works well for bream and carp too. So if you're after those species, red, well worth considering. So that's a good choice for carp, bream and tench. Now, green is a firm favourite amongst carp anglers, particularly commercial carp anglers. Now this ground bait in particular has been an absolute winner this last 3 or 4 years. Loads and loads and loads of carp have been caught using this ground bait, and also as a paste as well. You can mix this really sloppy and use it as a paste on the pole line. So this is a great choice in ground bait colour, particularly for carp, F1s, that sort of thing. Now then, brown, box standard colour. Now most species of fish go for brown ground bait, so if you're after chub, barbel, carp, bream, tench, anything at all, you don't want to mess about choosing anything in particular, then just go for brown. I mean, the good thing about brown is it will match the bottom of most venues also, so it'll become concealed on the bottom but also release the scents into the water, the particles, to draw the fish in without spooking them, because this will merge into the bottom of the lake or river or canal. And finally, we've got black. Now black is an absolute winner in winter. When the water gets cold, the suspended particles in the water will drop down, because the water will become calmer, colder, so the particles will drop down to the bottom and the water will become crystal clear. Now, if you're fishing a canal or a clear commercial carp water in winter, then black ground bait is an absolute winner, because black ground bait tends to be very fine ground particles, so it does tend to colour the water into a nice cloud, and that will not only give the fish, particularly roach or carp on commercials, roach on canals, that sort of thing, that clouded water will give the fish plenty of confidence to come into the cloud and feed. But it will also give them protection as well from predators likes of pike and zander on canals. So black is a key ground bait to use in winter when the water's gone absolutely crystal clear. So I hope that helps. I hope that will help you decide which ground bait colour to pick. Now, moving on to mixing ground baits. Okay, the items that you'll need are a round mixing bowl, some water from the venue that you're fishing. You could use a collapsible mixing bowl like this, or a round bucket like so. It doesn't really matter as long as it's round, because it will enable you to mix all the ground bait equally. Okay. Also, if you wish, you can use a riddle. Now, during the warmer months, riddling ground bait isn't that important, because you can simply dunk the ground bait into your collapsible mixing bowl, add water, mix it up, get it to the correct consistency, which I'll show you later, and then just use it as is, either boiling in, cupping in on a pole, or using in a feeder. But in winter, when the fish don't feed that well, you know, they're very finicky, and the smallest amount of feed that you put in there, the better. So any larger lumps of ground bait that stick together, adhere together, can become a food item for cold water roach, cold water skimmers, cold water perch, that sort of thing. So using a riddle in winter can really pay dividends. You simply mix the ground bait up, push it through the riddle so that it removes any large particles which you can discard, throw onto the bank, give to the robins, that sort of thing, and then you'll have an extremely fine ground bait mix that won't feed the fish. And the only item of food that they'll be able to find is your loose fed squats, that sort of thing, or the item of food that's on the hook, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want. Okay, so let's move on to mixing the ground bait itself. Like I say, you need a round mixing bowl and then your ground baits of choice. In this case, I'm mixing up some Method Mix and green swim stin, just to show you how to mix two different sorts of ground bait. So, the dry ingredients go into the bowl, like so. Put them all in. That's the green got in. There we go. And then the second ground bait, the brown. There we go. Now, what you must do now, if you're mixing two different types of ground bait, is to thoroughly mix them together dry, like so. So all the particles become completely mixed together, so there's no different ground baits at one side of the bowl. So once those have been mixed together thoroughly, you're ready to add the liquid. But if you wish, now's the time to add some colourant or some powdered additives. Now, something like this, as an example, this is rich with green lip mussel extract. Now, carp and bream love this, and tench do too. This is a powdered additive. Now, if you wanted to pep up your ground bait, make it a little bit different to anybody else, now's the time to put in your powdered additives and mix it together thoroughly, just as I've just done, okay? Also, there are ground bait colourants on the market. Now, again, these are a powdered form. If you wanted to turn this ground bait black to use in winter, like I say, on a clear venue, then now's the time to add the powder. Again, mix it up thoroughly so it's completely dispersed throughout the crumbs. Now the next stage is to add the water. Okay, now you've also got a choice here too, because you can either add neat lake water, like I'm adding now, straight into the middle, just a little bit at a time, and give it a good whisk with the fingertips, like so. If you wanted to add a liquid additive, you could have put the additive into the lake water, okay, given that a mix, and then added that to the ground bait. That again will give you an edge over somebody else on the lake, because your ground bait would be slightly different. Okay, so you whisk this through, just using my fingertips, giving it a really good stir, get both hands in, give it a rub, like so. Now at the moment, this is a little bit dry, it still needs some more water. So, get the lake water again, pour it into the middle, just a trickle like that. Again, using your fingertips, get right in there, give it a good thorough stir, like so. Okay. Now ideally, when you arrive at your peg, and you decided which peg you're going to fish, or you're given and allocated a peg in a match. Now the best thing to do really, if it's going to be a ground bait match or a ground bait session, is to do this when you start, because once you've mixed the ground bait to the correct consistency, it will dry out again. So if you get on with this job first, before you tackle up, you can revisit the ground bait and add a little bit more water. And then as soon as that whistle blows, or as soon as you've got your float rig sorted out, etc., you can put your ground bait in and get on with the job at hand, catching a load of fish. Now this ground bait has got the right amount of water in there. It's absolutely spot on. Thoroughly mixed in all corners, all the way around. Now how I know that this ground bait is mixed correctly is because I can take a handful like so and just give it a single squeeze, and there we go. Now that holds together just perfect, that. So if it can crumble in your hands like so. And that is perfect. The tight, obviously the harder that ball will go. But it doesn't matter how hard you squeeze it, it will crumble just by pushing my thumb onto the mix like so. There we go. Also, one key element of getting your fingers in like so and giving it a good whisk like this, it'll aerate the ground bait, and that means it'll break down better in the water, and it also means that it'll crumble easier from the feeder. So there we go. That's simply how to mix ground bait. Now going back to what I was saying about winter, now if I move this forward a little bit, get another ground bait bowl and the riddle, place the riddle over the second ground bait bowl, and then just pour a little bit of this mix over the riddle like so. Just discard that a second. Now that's the ground bait I've just mixed. Okay, so I'll give that a little bit of a rattle like so, and there. You see on the top of there's loads on there. Now if you used to use this ground bait mix in winter when it's absolutely rock hard, now any roach could come along and pick up a single one of these particles. They might have 5, 6, maybe 10, maybe 20, but they'll be full. That'll be it. That'll be them fed for the day, maybe 2 days, and that's not what you want. So if you do riddle your ground bait in winter, you can push these particles through if you wish, like so. There we go. And any unneeded particles, just give them to the birds, give them to the chaffinches and robins. Put on the side there, and then what you've got there is perfect ground bait, nicely aerated, no lumps in it whatsoever. So you could use that confidently on any cold water venue and know full well that the only decent amount of food will be the ones that you're putting in via the pole cup or the catapult or in your ground bait or the one on your hook. So that's mixing ground bait for summer and winter. And finally there's just a couple more points, and that is how to look after your ground bait once it's been mixed. Now in the summer this will dry out very, very quickly, and it'll also dry out very quickly if you add particles to it, particularly pellets. Now pellets are dry. You add pellets to a ground bait and the pellets will draw the moisture from the crumb into the pellets itself. So the longer the pellets are in there, the drier the ground bait becomes. So you'll have to look after it, you'll have to nurture it as the day goes on. Now one way of doing it is simply to use an atomizer and give it a bit of a spray, like so. If your ground bait becomes too dry, just coat the top, give it a bit of a whisk around like that. And it doesn't matter how dry your ground bait is, it will always form a ball again, just like that. Alternatively, if it's a blistering hot day, just get an old towel, like so. Put an old towel over the top of it, keep your ground bait in the shade, and it'll be fine for many, many hours. So basically, that is how to mix ground bait for summer and winter. Don't forget to choose the right colour ground bait for the venue you're fishing, for the species of fish and the colour of the water itself. Don't forget to look after your ground bait. Very important, once it's been mixed, check to see that it still holds together after a couple of hours. If it doesn't, just give it a spray with an atomizer, trickle a little bit more water on, just a touch, whisk it round just with the fingertips, like so. If the water's cold, don't forget to riddle it. And also, if you're mixing up ground bait the night before, make sure you over wet the ground bait slightly, because it will dry out during that time overnight. A lot of bream anglers prefer to mix their ground bait overnight because it deadens the mix. All the water is drawn into the particles, so it just stays on the bottom. Now if you do this, and I do this as well, I prefer to mix my ground bait at home the night before any bream session. Now you've always got to get it out the bag and double check it first, because it might need a little bit of a top up of water, and then add your particles, your loose feed onto the top. So I hope that's helpful, and yeah, please watch the next part in this ground bait series.